So, Jim, thanks very much for joining me. Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
It's really nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. Just to see
So you're just back from Scotland?
Got back a couple of weeks ago, and it was really interesting. Had a good time. Yeah. And,
so you basically went to visit some cairns and
well,
some circles?
Yeah, I went to see Callanish, and at this time of year, there was that 18.6-year cycle. And I thought, well, that'd be nice to see a moonrise and bounce along the mountains, but the weather beat me there. But yeah, I had a very interesting time, especially looking at the Clava Cairns.
So you found some interesting alignments with the sunrise?
Not with the sunrise, and that was a real surprise because I hired a car. I only had one day to look at it. So I drove out in the morning and took my old camcorder with me because I'm in a club here in Brisbane and I thought I'd take some photos. And of course, I left it in one of the cairns. And I went back to Inverness for lunch and thought, oh, gosh, I've got to go back out. So when I got back out there at 2 o'clock, I noticed that the place was lighting up. The sun was in the right spots and shining directly down the pathways to the centre of the cairns. So, yeah, that was very interesting and a big surprise.
So that would be like basically the sun at its zenith, would it?
It was the equinox. It was the day before the equinox.
At the equinox, yeah.
And the sun was just in the right place between 2 and 3. And both cairns are exactly the same. And it was very, very interesting. So I wrote to the Scottish people and they sent me back some information, but I haven't really heard anything more since. So I'm hoping someone up there can go out in September and have another look.
So where are these cairns? They're in Scotland?
Yeah, they're only about 3 miles from, I've got a cat sitting on the computer. They're only about 3 miles from Inverness, so they're not far, and they're very close to that battlefield, that famous battlefield called Tongan.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've contacted some archaeology
I
department?
contacted the Scottish archaeology that looks after the cairns.
Yeah.
And they really, they got back to me with information, but that was it. So I just suggested that someone might try and have another look in September when the equinox comes around.
Yeah. And were you aware of any sunrise or other alignments at these cairns before?
Well, it's interesting because it is aligned to the solstice, evidently.
Yeah.
But that's the sunset or the sunrise, and you don't get a lot of sun. But in the middle of the day, just after lunch, you certainly do. And just from what I looked, I think, this was designed that way.
That's so interesting because a lot of the times people associate, if there's any kind of alignment with the sun or the moon or whatever, it's the setting or the rising. But this is different.
It is. And when I got to Callanish, if you know what Callanish looks like, it's sort of like a Celtic cross. And the left-hand cross or arm of the cross is actually aligned to the solstice, the equinox sunset.
Right.
And I think if someone went out there, we might find the same thing happens around 2 to 3 at Callanish that happens at the Clava Cairns.
At the equinox.
Yeah, at the equinox.
Yeah.
But not at sunset or sunrise, but around mid-afternoon.
Just out of interest, do you think it would be the equinox as in the 21st, 22nd of March, or would it be a little sooner or a little after? Because the equilux would be maybe around about the 17th of March. Would there be any?
Well, from what I've gathered, it was the 20th of March this time.
Yeah.
And it could be the 22nd of March in September.
Yeah.
So it varies by a couple of days. But if you're on 5 days either side of it, it's okay. Fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you make of Callanish then?
I loved it. It's windy, but Yeah, it was just a pity the weather was not good. So I got out there at 5 in the morning, and it was pitch black and overcast and rainy. So that was all right.
And did you see the moon?
I didn't see the moon.
All the way from Australia. Oh.
That's all right. That was good.
Yeah. And that's amazing. So this is so every time you go to visit the UK, you discover something new.
Well, yeah, but I also visit other places. Tonga, especially in the Pacific, is interesting, and that's one of the places where the same sort of thing happens with what they call the Haʻamonga of Maui, which is called the Stonehenge of the Pacific. And about the same time in the afternoon, it throws a shadow on the side of the Haʻamonga, and it's very interesting. Yeah,
that's right. I remember reading and looking at all your photos on the Tonga. It's basically just one sort of archway type megalith, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one archway, but the way they built it, it's interesting. You'd have to go through the photos and have a good look. But the sequence usually lasts for about nearly an hour from start to finish. So there's a beginning and an end. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and you knew about that before you went, right?
No. Years ago, I was standing under it, and I noticed the sun was coming through, and there's a sort of a gap in the between the archway. There's a lintel, and it's leaning slightly. Forms a type of V, and I said, I wonder what this will be like in the afternoon. And that was the first time I'd seen the shadow come through. And one of the ladies there, I said, has anyone seen this before? And she said, oh yeah, an English couple came out 5 years in a row just to get a photo. But because of the same thing, if the weather's not good, you don't see the sun, you don't see a shadow. So it's very interesting. So,
I remember when you went at the time you were waiting, and then we had the COVID disruption, and you couldn't go, but eventually you had to go. So that's great that you found that.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I was digging around, having a poke around, and I found a marker stone. And the sun actually closes in and forms a sort of a shadow around the marker stone, and then a line of sunlight hits it. And the word marker is the Tongan word for stone. So it's really very, anyway.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
No, I just saw something in Peter Marsh's film about the skeletons in the cupboard, about how that was connected to Maui, that archway.
Yeah, it is. It's called the Haʻamonga of Maui, the burden of Maui. And a local fisherman told me and showed me where they dragged the stones from the canoes. And up to it was pretty big, and it's still alive in the Tongan memory. And lots of them have memories of, the large uprights, many tons in weight. And he told me that the story in his family was that they all slackened off a bit. They were too heavy to pull. So the overseer cracked one of the skulls of the men, and they all pulled a bit harder. So it's interesting.
They're so lucky to have these oral traditions, because they're so valuable.
Yeah, and when you talk to the Tongans, it takes a while, but eventually they'll just come out with something, and very interesting. And across the other side of the island is called there's a huge rock that's called Tsunami Rock these days. And I went out and had a look, and it's associated with Maui as well. And one of the nobles out there I was speaking to said, what do you think, Jim? What do you think of this? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know. But I can see that's sitting on an artificial mound. And then he told me, he said, yeah. And when I was a child, there is a series of these mounds with smaller stones around the side of the original one, and all the way around the island. And I found about a dozen of them so far. But I've got a couple of people interested, but no, it's interesting.
Yeah. because I know it also in that film that I just mentioned, in the Skeletons in the Cupboard, I think it's the second part, they mention how there's a whole load of surveyors who were going around measuring and placing stones.
Oh yeah, but these are these are if you Google up Tsunami rock
Yeah.
at Tonga, you'll see the size of it. And an old Tongan said to me, "Look, I believe it was dragged there." And the first time I saw it, I thought, "Oh, the guy is dreaming. It's just too big." But then, if you look closely, you can see that it's actually sitting on an artificial mound, and only about 50 yards away is the beach, and there's a great hole in the reef. So there is the myth or the story of Maui picking up the earth with his hook. So maybe there's always a little bit of truth in some of these stories.
Yeah.
How he did that, I don't.
What do you think the stones were for? Like both in
Well,
Tonga or elsewhere, these big megaliths?
this is the same thing with the Equinox, and the royal family over there has a procession around Maui's rock, or the Tsunami rock, and they believe it's also connected with the Equinox. So yeah, there's something to it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So it's if it's connected to the equinox, then it's clearly to do with observing time cycles, even if it's just the basic function of the solar year in some way.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I know you found some amazing rock art in Australia.
Oh, yeah. A guy called George Gray. He was a British explorer, and he was the first to discover what they now call the Wandjina. Those the people with the faces, and oh, hang on, I'll show you a photo of what they do. Hang on. If you can see a book. Yeah.
Yes, with the halo.
Yeah, the halos.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I want to find that. So what I did was, it's in one of the most remote parts of Australia, and it's been quarantined for some reason almost since the very beginning. So when I had a bit of time, about 20-something years ago, I went across to and hired a helicopter, because there's no road.
Is that remote, really?
Nothing like that, yeah. I've worked for Air Services Australia, so I'd done a couple of searches in my job. And when I flew over the area, I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to find this cave. But then Google Earth came along, and I had Gray's map. And I thought, I'll give it another go. And the second time I found it, yeah.
So it's at the entrance of a cave, isn't it? It's really massive.
It is. I've got that. Hang on.
Oh, that's it. Yes. Wow. Is that a photo you took then?
Yeah.
That's the photo you took. Yeah. That's amazing.
Look, and that's another one. That's 4 women underneath in the same cave.
Same thing. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
And when you look at the hair, it's actually really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So you've actually visited loads of amazing sites.
Sorry? Yeah.
You've visited loads of amazing sites, like ancient sites.
I tried to, yeah. When I took a redundancy many years ago, and I bought a round the world ticket and went to Easter Island and places like that. It was good.
Oh, I didn't know you'd been there as well.
And Great Zimbabwe, yeah, that was interesting too.
Great Zimbabwe, I remember because you had some photos of that you shared. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah. Anyway, it's been my hobby and interest for many years.
Yes, yeah, and also the units of measure. So that's how I first got to know about your work.
Yeah. Well, that came from my job with Air Services Australia, and in aviation, it's really strange because an aircraft, for instance, when it's flying along, it's not flying, it's flying in knots. So it might be flying at about 120 knots. It might be up at 5,500 feet, and it might have a visibility of, say, 10,000 metres. So you're dealing with different measures all the time. And that's really how I got into that. And then I put across a Saxon foot from a British bloke called Keith Irwin, who wrote a book called Man Learns to Measure.
Right.
Yeah, and that was that's how I got into that one.
Because I was just rereading that essay, that article that you wrote about starting with the history of the Saxon foot and then going into your trip to the Rollrights and then Stanton Drew. So can you just explain how that all came together?
Well, that was around the same time my eldest son came with me, and I said, oh, we'll go and have a look at Stonehenge and try and have a look at a couple of the other ones. And I had a book by Aubrey Burrell, Stone Circles of the UK. And when I got to the Rollrights, I said, oh, this is really interesting. And I happened to check on the measures, and it was just by accident that I realised the number 94. If you multiply 94 by pi, you get what is very close to a synodic month, which is about 29.53 days. So it was quite, and I thought, oh, this is interesting because this measure fits the Rollrights. And it turns out it also fits a couple of other places in the UK that I've been to, up on Orkney Island, for instance.
Oh, on Orkney as well?
Yeah, it's, well, There's anything that's around about 104 feet equals about 94 Saxon feet. So any of those stone circles around that size will fit it, and that is the moon. So 94 equals the moon.
So a Saxon foot is about 13.2 inches, would you say?
No, it's just about 39.6 inches, which is
that's the one, right? Saxon one.
And it's very close to the metre.
Yeah.
It's at 1.0084 of a metre. So the Saxon foot, of course, was in Europe as the northern foot. And the Roman general Drusus found it along the Rhine. And and so the Europeans had been using a measure very close to the metre for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's also, it was in England,
So you found that, first of all, the first instance you found that was at the Rollright Circle, right?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
And there's something about the number 47 as well.
Yeah, well, 47 is half of 94.
Yeah.
And half of 47 is 23.5. So these are all moon numbers.
Yeah.
And the tonic circle is the area of the Rollright stones. So if someone gets a calculator out and finds the area of a circle with a diameter 94, they'll find that the area equals a metonic circle in number.
That's actually amazing, because when you think of it, like on the one hand, you've got the circumference, so it's like a linear unit, and that's the lunar month in days, and then the area then is a cycle of like a lunar cycle, but in the area, in the same units, in the same shape.
Yes. And well, I think so other people could recognize this. And so these stone circles like Stanton Drew, they're all using the same measure. And so the scientists, they were scientists, those people. So they would have recognized and said, oh, yeah, they've drawn.
Because So it's Stonehenge as well. Didn't you find it's the same setup with some similar numbers?
It's some of the numbers are, and there's a lot of controversy about numbers. So I try not to go too far because everyone has got a different idea of exactly the diameter of and all that sort of thing.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work exactly the same way, but it is part of the same system. Yeah, I believe.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's more complicated.
Because that's interesting as well. That I think Petrie reckoned that the diameter of the Saxon circle was 100. I have to get this right. 100 Roman feet.
Yeah, he
and
thought.
already that's kind of like branching out a bit, because Roman feet, like Roman unit, what's this doing in a prehistoric site? So that's already quite interesting. But then you're finding Saxon feet and also inches. What about inches?
Inches, yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
So
well,
it's all very strange that we're finding, or you're finding, all these modern units in
yeah.
these really prehistoric sites.
And it when you really think about it, measures carry on, and there's no, even though we use meters and feet, we still trade together. And so there has to be some way there that you do it easily. And the ancients developed a way of doing it easily. Even though they had apparently different measures, they could still trade.
Yeah.
So they were able to combine it. The Northern or Saxon foot, when Drusus found it and discovered it along the Rhine, the Romans incorporated it into their system of weight measures. So, yeah, it can be done.
But then on the one hand, then you got trade, and on the other hand, you got astronomy. So I guess they feed one into the other, because you've got people moving about.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating that all around the world, and it's just so similar. These people, I guess it's, people think of the same thing. Everyone likes to know what's happening with the moon and the sun. So they've come up with the same numbers.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that there are these megalithic circles, for example, if you're just going to stick with the circles, the fact that they're all over the world, pretty much, that's already, like, it just shows that there's a similar way of thinking and a similar way of assuming that to do with counting time. I know that's already a bit controversial, but to do with counting time and maybe using similar numbers, and then of course similar units of measure.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I'm just trying to think about another one in Scotland that's exactly the same as well, quite famous. But they're using the same measures, and it's right down to when Irwin wrote his book. He wrote it about how they used it on farms, and what they stored. The old people stored their produce in during the winter when they needed to conserve food, and how the measuring stick they used was able to work out exactly how much food they needed to last the winter or whatever. His was a fantastic book for me. Yeah, Keith Irwin.
The idea is that you have, for example, a cylinder or a cube shape of grain, and then you stick the stick in, and you can tell.
Yep. And the box is the same height and width as the measuring stick, which, of course, Irwin called the wand.
The wand.
The wand, yeah. Because
so that's famous Saxon wand. Yeah.
He imagined a woman taking her children into the barn and using the measuring stick to figure out how much food they needed. And the kids would say, "What are you doing, Mum?" And he'd say, "It's magic."
Yes, exactly. I can feed you for another 3 weeks. After that, you're on your own. And so that's the Saxon wand. So you said 39.6 inches, and it's very close to the meter.
The wand is 39.6.
Right.
And that's about 3.3 feet.
3.3 feet. And then, so what about the meter then? So, and in your article about the Rollrights and the Saxon foot, you quote Petrie saying that, so Petrie was writing like over 100 years ago, and he said something along the lines of the Saxon foot was originally used in Britain, and then it got superseded by what we now call the imperial measures, but it was used for a long time. And isn't it ironic that there was already this unit very close to a metre long before the 20th century, or the 19th in his case?
It is amazing, yeah. And it's probably, it was a better system of measures than we have now, because it incorporated the metre and the mile. 39.6 does it. And if we had that measure today, only a slight change, it would make things so much easier. We would have
Yeah. I mean, so basically what Petrie seems to be saying, and what you have found, is that this unit that was close to the metre, so this Saxon wand, was part of a greater system. It wasn't that there was imperial on one side and then the metre, and there was a metric system on the other side. It's just that there was a metre length, pretty much, that was in existence. It's not that there were two different systems. It's all part of the same system, right?
Yeah, all part of the same system. And somehow, even though the metre is slightly different now, it must have been part of that. It must have been part of it as well, because
modern metre, that is in the 39.3700787 inch one, the modern metre.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, well, when I spoke about the glass pyramid at the Louvre,
I was going to ask you about that.
We found that a modern metre, if it's written as a lunar year, 354.3 days, converts into imperial feet as 365.25 days. So you're looking at a lunar year and a solar year with the imperial feet and the metre.
So you've got the metre and the foot coexisting in the Pyramid of the Louvre.
I think so, yeah. And I think he's done it on purpose, because when you look at, this was I.M. Pei, that great architect that designed the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And when you look at other designs, you can almost see the same thing. I haven't gone right into it, but if someone wants to have a look at it, he's done it before. And he's combined the two, the imperial and metric system, in his architecture.
Yeah. And that could be just something of his own invention. It could be just him being really clever and then you being clever to find it. But it could be that this is actually a continuation of a really old system. We don't know. But so in your article about that, you said that the base of the pyramid in the Louvre was 35.42 meters. So that's basically a lunar year divided by 10. And then the height as well was interesting. You said it was 21.64 meters. And then you were asking yourself, why not just 35 meters? Why not 21 meters? And then, rounding it up or rounding it down to a whole number.
You put odd numbers in and you wonder why.
Yeah. I mean, it is odd. Why would you do that? So there's obviously something going on there.
Well, when you see the number 216 for the height of the glass pyramid, you straight away say, that's a sacred number. So he's doing something there.
Yeah.
And because if you inscribe a circle in the base of the glass pyramid, that's where you get the 365 imperial feet. And the side of the pyramid is the lunar feet, 35.42. So, he's combining both. Very high.
But then that means that the modern meter and the English foot or the imperial foot actually work together
perfectly closely,
as part of one single system, which is kind of surprising because a lot of people, especially in the English-speaking world, don't have much love for the meter. And to find the two working together is kind of curious.
And the old system, the 39.6, which is something like 1.008 of a metre, it's very, very close.
Yeah.
It works exactly it's just hand in glove with the imperial foot.
Yeah.
So I think someone has known about this for a long time. And yeah.
So
Anyway.
basically the metre came around with the French Revolution, although I think they were kind of gearing up for change from the French foot in France for a while because there was a lot of disorganization and uncertainty. But the metre came in then with the French Revolution, and I suppose there's a clue in the word revolution. There's a wheel going round. So there were lots of things that were being brought back into fashion. For example, you got these ladies like Madame Recamier posing on her chair with her feet out in a kind of a Greek style. But here you've got something that's probably even older than ancient Greece coming back in, which is the metre.
Yeah, and they obviously tied it to the size of the Earth, or they tried to as best they could. But it's just amazing how close these old measures are to the modern. Yeah.
So just to recap, so the metre is one particular part of the polar circumference of the Earth. So it's basically 40,000 kilometers, pretty much. I think the modern value is 40,007.5.
That's right, 45.
Something.
Pick that number, and when you look at 40,000 kilometres, and you look at the old Saxon or Northern feet, then you see the really interesting numbers come up like 3, 4, 5, 6. And yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6. So that's interesting because it's one of the harmonic numbers?
Yeah.
12?
Yeah. And you double it to 691.2. And these are numbers that come up in the socket base of the Great Pyramid.
Yes, I was going to say the Great Pyramid. We're back onto that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting things about the circumference of the Great Pyramid that I didn't realise for a long time is that it's almost, well, it is exactly the distance between the equator and 30 seconds north of the equator. Now, when I first heard about that, I thought, oh, it might be close. But anyway, I went to our local state government and they ran a program for me, and they said this is the distance between the equator and 30 seconds north, and it's the same as what Petrie and Cole came up with. So whether they could have known that, I don't know, but it comes out at about 68.7 northern feet or Saxon feet, which also happens to be the number of days in a year for the planet Mars. And on the planet Mars, from the equator on Mars to 30 seconds north of Mars is 36.5 miles, which is
I did not know that.
Yes. So I thought I'd better check this. So I wrote to NASA and I got a
the way you investigate everything.
Yeah. And they said, yeah, that's in the ballpark, Jim. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Absolutely mind-blowing.
Yes, it is. Yeah. That's
I
what
think if you had just one coincidence, it would be also just like a really enjoyable, mind-blowing moment. But when you have all of these put together, there's something else going on.
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
Is there any doubt in your mind that someone in the ancient world measured the circumference of the Earth pretty precisely?
I don't think there can be any doubt, really. It's just, well, you can't say for sure, but no, I think that if they measured it well enough, that and we know that people like Hipparchus were trying to do it, and they came close.
Yeah.
It's been an interest, and I wouldn't be surprised if this has been handed down over the centuries, and someone.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
And also all the relationships, all the ratios between the units, like these numbers are really interesting. Like I think you mentioned the link between the Saxon foot and the acre with the number 36, for example.
Yeah,
36,000.
square feet. Yeah, 1,000 square feet instead of 4,356. And even when you look at 4,356, you still see the numbers 3, 4, 5, 6 in there. So they've done it somehow.
Somehow. I mean, the proof is there, right?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
The acres really. Yeah.
And the fact that you find the Saxon foot in the Great Pyramid, that's also very intriguing, because, as you were saying, it's associated with Northern Europe and a different time period. Anyway, like you mentioned Drusus and.
Yeah, well, we know where it came from. It came from the Indus Valley, and that's been found, and it's been traced to other parts of Europe. So it's moved from the Indus Valley. It may have been somewhere else as well. I don't know, but so it's circulated.
So that will be based on a digit or a unit of, is it 0.66 inches?
Well, it's 13.2 inches is 1 foot, and there are 16 digits in a foot.
Yeah.
So it's 0.825 by 6. I hope I got that right. Anyway, I haven't got a calculator in front of me, but yeah. And so in a normal cubit, there's 24 digits. And in the royal cubit, I think there's 25.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And actually, I remember feeling really impressed by the fact that those same units are found in India as well. I know it's not that far away, but it's the same system.
It is the same system, yeah.
Yeah, and they have a mile, right? They have a unit of 9 miles in India, I think, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for all these connections that people don't really know about, and are kind of really surprising when you don't know about them.
Yes, it is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah. So what's the explanation then? So it was like there were some very smart people, very scientific people. They traveled the world.
Yeah, they travelled the world, and wherever they've gone, they've set up some sort of science experiment, and gone to northern Scotland and looked at the motions of the moon there, and then travelled. Who knows where they got to, but they certainly got around. And we know they got to Central America and different places. The Saxon foot, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, has been found in some buildings in New Mexico.
In New Mexico, right.
Some old buildings in New Mexico, yeah. But yeah, so it's been around. That's
interesting to make the connection to the Americas. Now, I know there are lots of connections, and of course they have the megaliths and the stone circles as well. Fewer, but they do have the stone circles. In fact, someone told me the other day that one of the stone circles, I think was in Brazil, had the same number of curbstones as the tomb in inverted commas in Nath in Ireland, which was 127, which is half the number of sidereal months in a metonic cycle.
Right.
But it's just to see the connections. It's really interesting that they're using the same numbers and very often the same units of measure.
Same measure, yeah. And that Pyramid of the Sun's interesting in Mexico. Yeah, that's very interesting. And Graham Hancock looked at that, and in one of his books, he came up with at the Equinox, it takes, I think it was like 66.6 seconds, according to his. I better check that, for the shadow to pass along the face of the pyramid.
This is the Teotihuacan Pyramid with the snake.
The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan.
Oh, the Pyramid of the Sun, right.
Yeah. And it turns out that that's just about the base of the pyramid in the street, 666. Yeah.
Another amazing number that's well known.
Yes, unfortunately.
We should move on from that number, though. So what would you say to someone who says, nah, there's no way. There's no way that these connections are true. There's no way that people in the past knew about the size of the Earth or were counting the moon cycles and the sun?
No, well, I'd say no, they're wrong. And I think a lot of people, especially when you visit places like Tonga, and the ordinary people know there's something happening there. And yeah, so they've had visitors, and I can't see there's any doubt. But look, to get the whole story would be amazing. But you just keep looking.
Yeah.
And eventually
and measuring.
And measuring, yeah. And that does it, absolutely.
And you've actually, that reminds me, you found also some really interesting connections in the Great Pyramid, in the sarcophagus.
Well, when I looked at the third pyramid, I was fooling around with the third pyramid, and I noticed that the volume of the third pyramid was about, not exactly, it was about 1/10 the volume of the Great Pyramid. And that was based on the measures of I.E.S. Edwards, who was in charge of the Egyptian antiquities at the British Museum for many years, and he was an archaeologist as well. He collected the latest and best figures on pyramid bases. And I thought, oh, 1/10, that's interesting. And I thought, well, I went to bed, and of course, as you do, got up about 2 o'clock in the morning. I said, well, what if it wasn't a pyramid? What if it was a cube sitting there on the Gaza, and the third pyramid was a cube? Well, if that was the case, and you double the cube, which is an ancient problem, you come up with the Great Pyramid in the shape of a pyramid. So I developed a method of doubling a cube into the shape of a pyramid. Now, you can't double a cube into the shape of another cube. That's impossible. But you can into a pyramid. And so I think that problem was used as well in Giza. And so when I looked at the volume of the pyramid and divided it by 8,000, I came up with the volume of the King's Chamber. And it's pretty well exactly. And then when I divided it by 275, I came up with the volume of the coffer. So the volume of the inner side of the coffer is 1/2,200,000th of the volume of the pyramid. So I think they've tied it all together.
Yeah.
Now,
so that's another example of how, if you actually look and measure and look at the measurements precisely, you can come up with these really intriguing connections, shall we say?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And everyone, of course, disagrees with the size of the Great Pyramid. So I thought, well, I'm not going to get too far into that. But
yeah, that's amazing. So do you think then, like, you've traveled so much, you've been to so many different sites, so from Tonga to Easter Island to the UK loads of times, to Africa, Zimbabwe, and of course around Australia. So you've really asked questions and looked for answers yourself, rather than just, reading up on something and just staying with that. So how do you think it's altered your sense of the ancient world now that you've really connected with these structures, these places?
Yeah, I think we're all part of it, and we only have to just look, and I feel a part of it, and I'm pretty sure we all are. We've just got to look and feel, yeah. But this will work out eventually.
That's a good advice. Where would you maybe be off to next, Jim? Have you any travel plans?
I'm barred from going anywhere at the moment. My wife's told me no, we're going to Cambodia or something next time, but that's okay because there's a fair bit of stuff there.
Oh yeah. Well, that's got plenty of interesting temples.
Oh yeah, I've been there once. And yes, the that measure is sitting in there too. It's at Angkor. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, for the moment I'm barred. I'm not going anywhere. No.
That sounds great. Well, Jim, thank you so much for chatting. It's really interesting to chat to you, and it's actually so nice to meet you as well, because I've been reading your work for so long now, and I just always was inspired by it, and look, you're always looking for different angles, and then the fact that you found the Saxon foot, in a prehistoric circle in the Great Pyramid, and I just think that's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
it's really lovely to chat. Well, listen, I better leave you.
Good time doing it, Melissa.
Yeah. That's good to know. Well, and actually, for anyone watching this, do you want to just tell them if you have any articles they might read or events coming up that you can talk about?
We haven't. I belong to a history club here in Brisbane, and we meet once a month. But there's a lot of clubs, and we're getting older. Membership is shrinking. So if anyone wants to come along to the Brisbane City Library on the 4th Sunday of each month, they'll find us on the ground floor. And we generally, if we don't have a speaker, we'll have a video, or someone on the floor will just get up and give us a talk. Yeah, so that's my pitch at the moment. We need some more.
Fantastic.
And it's called Exploring History. We're not incorporated. It's just a group of people who are interested in history, and history generally. It can be local history as well as ancient history.
Yeah. Well, there's so much. Obviously, there's just so much to talk about. And did you say you were submitting a paper to a group of archaeologists in Europe?
Yeah, I'm trying to, but it's really hard to get in. Anyway, if you know anyone who's interested, especially an archaeoastronomer out in Tonga, would be great, because we'd be able to nail it, I'd say, with a little bit of expertise.
The photos you have, the articles you've written, I mean, they tell it all, really. It's very clear. There's nothing, in a sense, there's nothing complicated. You can see how it works.
Yeah.
But you just have to kind of accept it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Jim. It's great to chat, and thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much.